Weinstein's lawyer says the disgraced movie mogul will plead not guilty. He says they'll fight to get the charges dismissed, that they're not supported by the facts, and that all of his clients' sexual encounters were consensual.
To lure young women into situations where he was able to violate them sexually.
By other state prison inmates, Bretz says Nassar won't be in the company of those inmates.
If a child sex abuser is murdered in prison, it's not going to be by another sex offender. It's going to be by a murderer, often somebody who's serving first-degree murder, which is life without parole. So there's nothing you can do to him. He'll do it right out in the open. It makes him a hero among the prisoners.
Bretz says even though the federal prison will be safer than the state prison, Nassar will still be seen as the lowest on the totem pole of inmates and will have to consider asking for isolation.
Jerry Sandusky back in cuffs, wearing a Penn State tracksuit taken from his home in the middle of the afternoon, and today charged with abusing 2 more children. His attorney predicted new charges and custody on World News.
Bail's going to be set, and he's going to wind up in jail.
R. Kelly, what do you want to say to your fans?
Accusations and rumors have swirled for decades. Now R. Kelly is formally facing sexual abuse charges.
Are you innocent?
Robert Kelly was indicted before a Cook County grand jury on 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse involving 4 victims. Aggravated criminal sexual abuse is a Class 2 felony with a sentencing range of 3 to 7 years per count.
A wealthy money manager whose friends have included presidents and a prince is behind bars in Manhattan tonight. Jeffrey Epstein is accused of sex trafficking and molesting underage girls. As Mola Lenghi reports, it's the latest in a string of allegations.
Epstein's arrest by federal agents in New Jersey Saturday came as he stepped off his private jet when it arrived from Paris. The 66-year-old multi-millionaire hedge fund manager, also a registered sex offender, is accused of paying underage girls for massages and molesting them at his homes in Florida and New York, according to the Associated Press. Epstein has surrounded himself with a high-profile circle of friends, including then-private citizen Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, and former President Bill Clinton, who reportedly took more than 24 trips on Epstein's private jet between 2001 and 2003.
Different members of society wield different levels of power and influence. On a smaller level, a boss or manager of a retail store wields a certain level of power over their employees. With that power comes a certain level of respect or at times even fear from their subordinates. If the wrong person is given even this modicum of authority, it can create a stressful and unpleasant work environment for the employees. The level of pressure, influence, or fear that can be inflicted by a store manager, however, pales greatly in comparison to someone like a politician, a wealthy financier with a powerful social circle, or a successful film producer worth millions and millions of dollars. In all of these cases, the extreme amount of influence and power possessed by these individuals was enough to manipulate others and even hide their actions, for a time. But unearthing the horrible actions of someone with this level of power and holding them accountable can prove to be difficult, especially when somebody rises past the point of normal popularity to almost legendary status, and is widely known not only for being hardworking and successful, but moral, righteous, helpful, a good role model, and even a father figure for some. However, when all of that is stripped away to reveal something much more dark and sinister underneath the surface, the fallout can be absolutely abysmal.
This is a very important day. Judgment Day has come.
He used his acting skills and that endearing TV personality to win over.
I cannot forgive the predator and serial rapist that you are. Always have been, and always will be.
talking about a car now. I knew something was wrong when we went down there and the man saw that she brought her father. So the man said, well, I don't think I can find the keys for the car. So I said, well, I don't think I can find the money. So the man found the keys.
In order to fully appreciate the downfall of the infamous Bill Cosby, it's important to understand how he reached such a seemingly untouchable status in the first place. William Henry Cosby Jr., known as Bill Cosby, began his career as a stand-up comedian in San Francisco in the 1960s, and soon also branched off into acting. His popularity steadily grew, as did his accolades, such as the Grammy Award for Best Comedy Album, as well as the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, the first time an African-American man won an Emmy for acting.
Nominees for Best Television Series. Settle down. The nominees for Best Television Series, Musical or Comedy are The Bill Cosby Show.
Cheers.
Fame.
The Jeffersons.
Kate and Allie.
And the winner is The Bill Cosby Show.
From there, his popularity only grew at an even faster rate. He created the animated television series Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. He starred in multiple films, and he even earned a doctoral degree in education from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. From there, he produced and starred in one of the #1 shows in America for nearly 5 years, The Cosby Show. Not only was The Cosby Show a network success, with people even saying the show revived the sitcom genre, but it also began to create a persona for Bill Cosby that many in America could empathize with and even look up to. Cliff Huxtable.
They haven't worked anything out for themselves. It's my barbecue sauce.
Your barbecue sauce.
My barbecue sauce. Haven't you ever noticed after people have some of my barbecue sauce, after a while when it kicks in, they get all huggy-buggy?
Oh, stop.
I'm dead serious. Haven't you ever noticed that after one of my barbecues and they have the sauce, people want to get right home? Let me tell you something else. I got a cup of it up on the night table. I got a cup of it, I said. Left it up there breathing. Why don't you give the chicken to these people that's going up and have some sauce?
So here's the rest of the chicken, you guys.
Cliff Huxtable was the character played by Cosby during the run of The Cosby Show from 1984 to 1992. The character was a family head and successful OBGYN with strong virtues, a healthy family life, a dedicated and reasonable father, who still managed to have a strong sense of humor and find himself in amusing antics every episode. People resonated so much with the character of Cliff Huxtable that he was named the greatest television dad. And people associated Cliff Huxtable so closely with the persona of Bill Cosby that it wasn't long before Cosby started being labeled America's dad. The Cosby Show grew so popular and was so well liked by the masses that a 1992 article of Entertainment Weekly stated that The Cosby Show helped to make possible a larger variety of shows with a predominantly black cast. As goes the pattern for this part of the video, Cosby's popularity continued to skyrocket into the 2000s. He went on to host Kids Say the Darndest Things, which portrayed him as a humorous but respectful father figure who kids felt comfortable being around.
Well, now it's time to meet Jeremy Fine. Hey, hey. I noticed you have some, now, whose name's on the sneakers?
Michael Jordan.
I see. Now, what do your parents do for a living, Mr. Huh?
An anesthesiologist.
An anesthesiologist and
a nurse anesthetist.
A nurse anesthetist? What is the difference?
They're not spelled the same.
Cosby was also very generous with his success, using his increased popularity and capital to build up the black community. He donated millions of dollars to historically black colleges and universities, such as Spelman College and the Morehouse Medical School. He funded museums to feature black art, and didn't turn his back on the community and people who he grew up with. Bill Cosby had reached a level of stardom and adoration that only a few will ever understand, let alone experience. He was adored and respected by millions. America's dad was flying high. But soon, public opinion on Cosby would become slightly more mixed as he began to dabble in politics. This period would be notably marked by his popular pound cake speech, where at the NAACP Image Awards he adopts an almost supremacist point of view as he justifies the shooting of a young black man over stealing pound cake. At this point in the video, I planned on playing you guys the 3-minute audio clip of the pound cake speech. However, my video kept on getting hit with copyright issues no matter what I did. I tried slowing down the audio, speeding up the audio, even distorting the audio to the point where you couldn't even recognize that you were listening to a human voice anymore. But no matter what I did, the automated copyright system picked it up and flagged it. But I still highly recommend you look up the audio for the pound cake speech. It was a fairly polarizing speech by Bill Cosby in which he criticizes young African American men for not wanting school, not wanting an education, wasting Brown versus Board of Education, and acting like a gangster and not speaking English. It's very fascinating to listen to. Also, congrats to this copyright holder for one of the most aggressive and accurate automated content IDs I've ever seen. This time period in Cosby's career was met with more than a few mixed reviews. He didn't tackle any large issues of racism or inequality. He wasn't the beacon of hope that so many revered him as for so many years. In fact, to many, it appeared he was overly critical of the very community who supported him throughout his career. He looked down on young black men for using foul language, wearing their hats backwards and their pants too low. He now appeared to be self-righteous and grandstanding, and began to draw criticism from the black community.
Do you watch the Bill Cosby Show? I do too. I love Bill Cosby Show. I've been a big fan of Bill Cosby all my life. Never met the man before, but he called me up about a year ago and chastised me on the phone for being too dirty on stage. And it was real weird because I had never met him, and he just thought he should call me up because he was Bill and tell me that he did about what comedy is all about. And I sat and listened to this man chastise me. And when Bill Cosby chastises you, you forget you grown. You feel like one of the Cosby kids and shit.
And one of those critics would prove to be the single most pivotal person in exposing Cosby's reprehensible behavior that had been hidden behind the scenes for so long. That man was Hannibal Buress.
As the fucking smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. Just gets on TV. Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s.
When a large scandal breaks, it can happen a number of ways. One way is a snowball effect. One person coming forward, followed by another, and then another, and then another, until the flood of accusations is too much to ignore or be overlooked. This was very effectively demonstrated in the case of Larry Nassar, who sexually assaulted a large number of young girls during his time as an osteopathic physician and doctor for various U.S. girls' gymnastics teams. His frequent assaults on young girls, despite the girls coming forward multiple times, were essentially brushed off or ignored by both parents and USA Gymnastics staff. Eventually, however, one of his previous victims, a woman by the name of Rachel Den Hollander, who had held back from going to the media due to the fear of not being taken seriously and ignored, exposed Nassar by sharing her harrowing experience of assault at the absolute perfect time. Her example created that snowball effect of victim after victim after victim coming forward and shining a light on Nassar's long history of sexual abuse on minors.
I told him that I wasn't lying, and that Larry Nassar had indeed sexually abused me. Larry Nassar's actions had already caused me significant anguish, but I hurt worse as I watched my father realize what he had put me through. My father and I did our best to patch up our tattered relationship before he committed suicide in 2016. But right here, right now, it's your turn. I implore you to do your part. Make a statement that forces other predators to think twice. Keep Larry Nassar out of our communities. I ask for a minimum of 40 and a maximum of 125. Then I went into the back room, and that's when everything changed. I was alone in the back room with him. He had me lie down on the table, and he sexually assaulted me. He touched the most innocent places on my body that day. I remember fear and pain and asking myself, what is happening? When it was over, I was so confused. What had he just done to me and why? It was awful and embarrassing. I left and kept the disgusting thing that had just happened to me back to myself. Your Honor, I understand the plea guidelines are for a minimum sentence range to 25 to 40 years, and I ask you to give Larry Nassar a 40-year minimum to 125-year maximum sentence for what he did to me.
Thinking back to these words filling my naive mind, all I can think of is how this man, someone who held oh so many high credentials, was the monster who left me with more pain and scars than I came to his office with. The pain of never trusting someone physically again, and the scars of being touched and exposed in places that were completely inappropriate. That day in the office is a day that will never be forgotten. My family and I drove from Naperville, Illinois to Mr. Nassar's office at the Michigan State Facility in Lansing, Michigan. I can't begin to explain the feeling I had moments after this immoral act had been performed. I got a moment to myself after the assault when I sat in the bathroom at the facility.
One day I will be able to, but I will never forget what you have done. I must ask you this. Are you remorseful for your actions and all of the lives that you have changed forever? Do you regret misusing your medical dominance? I could hear it in your voice that November day when you pled guilty. You are sorry for the pain that you have caused. You had the same sincerity as you told me the story of why you blame yourself for sweet Caroline's birth story, as you hugged me at your brother Mike's funeral, and all of those times you told me I just needed to rest and could not compete. After all, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you.
Larry, you do realize now that we, this group of women you so heartlessly abused over such a long period of time, are now a force, and you are nothing. You were trusted by so many and took advantage of countless athletes and their families. The effects of your actions are far-reaching. Abuse goes way beyond the moment, often haunting survivors for the rest of their lives, making it difficult to trust and impacting their relationships. It is all the more devastating when such abuse comes at the hand of such a highly regarded doctor, since it leaves survivors questioning the organizations and even the medical profession itself, upon which so many rely. Many adults had you convince the survivors that they were being dramatic or had been mistaken. This is like being violated all over again.
I do want to thank you first, Judge Aquilina, for giving all of us the chance to reclaim our voices. Our voices were taken from us for so long, but because the sentence rendered today will send a message across this country, a message to every victim, and a message to every perpetrator. Larry is the most dangerous type of abuser, one who is capable of manipulating his victims through coldly calculated grooming methodologies, presenting the most wholesome and caring external persona as a deliberate means to ensure a steady stream of young children to assault. He penetrated me, he groped me, he fondled me, and then he whispered questions about how it felt. He engaged in degrading and humiliating sex acts without my consent or permission. Women and girls who carry scars that will never fully heal, but who have made the choice to place the guilt and shame on the only person to whom it belongs, the abuser.
That is one way that a scandal can break. Another way that a scandal can break is due to an inciting incident, the match that lights the fuse that blows the lid right off. The inciting incident could even lead to the snowball effect of victims coming forward. The inciting incident can be a number of things. It can be a statement made to the right group of people. It can be information that is leaked on social media or the internet. It can be a news article or documentary. It could even be a bit in a stand-up comedy show.
Has the fucking smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. Skits on TV. Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom. Yeah, but straight women, Bill Cosby, so kind of brings it down a couple notches. I don't curse on stage, but yeah, you're a rapist, so take you saying lots of motherfuckers on Bill Cosby himself if you weren't a rapist. For the most part, it's fucking public Teflon image. I've done this bit on stage, and people don't believe. People think I'm making it up. I'm like, Bill Cosby, there's a lot of rape allegations. No, you devil. That shit is upsetting. If you didn't know about it, trust me. When you leave here, Google Bill Cosby rape. It's not funny. That shit has...
The bit by comedian Hannibal Buress, which he had already been performing for a few months, spread like wildfire after being written about on the Philadelphia Magazine's website. It is not an exaggeration to say that the bit performed by Hannibal Buress in October of 2014 would be the match that lit the fuse to blow up Bill Cosby's entire reputation, his perception in the eyes of American people and around the world, as well as pave the way for some semblance of vindication for his victims, of whom there were many.
I woke up and I had a bad dream, and that dream was that Mr. Cosby would do this to somebody else if I did not say or tell someone. So I woke up crying, and I said, Mom, Mr. Cosby drugged me and he sexually violated me. And she was so caught off guard.
Mom, he said he's a bastard.
The list of victims of Bill Cosby who came forward was long and ranged from the 1960s to the 2000s. In this video, I will be going through quite a few of these allegations. As you listen to them, you might think it a bit overindulgent to summarize all of these individual accusations. It is, however, necessary in order to truly grasp the extreme dichotomy between the America's Dad Teflon persona of Bill Cosby and the Bill Cosby who was a rapist, sexual predator, and manipulator. The first allegation we'll cover dates back to 1965 by a woman named Christina Rulli. She met Cosby through a talent agency. She claimed that Cosby invited her to a party, but when she arrived, no one else was there. She stayed and he fixed her a drink. Afterward, she said she became foggy and passed out. At some point during the night, she begins coming to. She says that at that point, she saw Bill Cosby naked, with his penis in his hand attempting to force her into oral sex. She pushed herself away from him, threw up in the bathroom, and went home. She came forward publicly with this story in 2005. Joan Tarshis was an up-and-coming comedy writer when she met Bill Cosby in 1969. She met him through mutual friends and began having lunches with him at his bungalow. One day, Cosby invited her to his bungalow alone to work on some comedy bits. He made her a drink, and from Joan's account, after she drank it, the next thing she remembers is waking up to Bill Cosby taking off her underwear. She lied and told him she had an STD which would alert Cosby's wife that he had been cheating. He then proceeded to pressure her into performing oral sex on him, which she did, but as she recounts, very unwillingly. He then handed her $10 and called her a cab. Victoria Valentino, former Playboy bunny, met Bill Cosby in 1970 shortly after the tragic passing of her son. Bill Cosby made arrangements for Victoria Valentino and actress Meg Foster to spend the day at a spa and go out to dinner. Victoria was hoping to get a role in Cosby's show, I Spy. During dinner, Valentino alleges that Cosby offered her and Foster a red pill that would make them feel better. After taking the pill, the women began to feel lethargic, barely able to stay awake. She then says that Cosby drove the both of them to his apartment where he raped Victoria twice, as Foster lay unconscious next to them. Valentino made these allegations in 1996 as part of an expose on the lives of Playboy models. The expose was never published, and her story would be forgotten until 2014. In 1984, Beth Ferrier was an aspiring model who had a friendship with Cosby. One day, she went to visit him in his dressing room on set, and he gave her a cappuccino. The next thing she remembered, she was in her car with her clothes a mess. She insists that Cosby drugged her and assaulted her. In 1985, aspiring actress Barbara Bowman, who was 17 at the time, developed a relationship with Cosby. She viewed him as a father figure, as she recounts in her own article. She alleges Cosby invited her for dinner and wine at his New York City brownstone under the guise of giving her career advice and mentoring her in the entertainment industry. After one glass of wine, she says that she passed out, and when she awoke, Cosby was standing over her and she was in her underwear and a t-shirt. She feels she is certain that Cosby sexually assaulted her while she was unconscious. In 1986, model Beverly Johnson alleged that during an audition for a role on The Cosby Show, Cosby invited Johnson to his home to go through reads for the part. While practicing, Cosby offered Johnson a cappuccino from his espresso machine, claiming it was one of the best cappuccinos she would ever have. She didn't really want it, but obliged to appease Cosby and took a few sips. She says that she immediately knew that she had been drugged. She began swearing at Bill Cosby over and over, causing Cosby to remove her from his home and get her a cab. Lachelle Covington was an actress who had a recurring role as a waitress on The Cosby Show. On January 28, 2000, at around 9:30 p.m. at Cosby's penthouse, she alleges that after a dinner he invited her to, under the guise of giving her career advice, he proceeded to rub her head, grope her butt, and insert her hand into his shirt, and pull it towards his sweatpants. She later also alleged that he groped her breast and exposed himself. She reported the incident and Cosby was questioned by authorities, but ultimately they decided not to prosecute. A woman named Sindra Ladd alleged that Cosby drugged and sexually assaulted her in 1969. Another woman named Lily Bernard claimed Cosby sexually assaulted her in the early 1990s. In addition to these allegations, it's important to note that there are even more women that came forward after the fallout in 2014. Among them were Janice Dickinson, Louisa Moritz, Carla Ferrigno, Michelle Hurd, and others. There was also the allegation made by a woman named Andrea Constant. Her allegation becomes one of the most critical and damning in the Cosby case. We will go through her story in a little bit. In the July 2015 issue of the New York Magazine, 35 women were featured on the cover, all with allegations that in one way or another they were sexually violated by Bill Cosby. Cosby's reaction to all of these allegations was pretty much what you would expect.
I would appreciate it if it was scuttled.
I hear you. I will tell that to my editors, and I think that they will understand.
Well, I think if you want to consider yourself to be serious, that it will not appear anywhere.
Okay. I appreciate what you've asked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In a statement Sunday, Cosby's attorney dismissed all but one of the cases, saying repeating the allegations does not make them true. In a follow-up statement Monday, the lawyer says that does not apply to a 2006 case that Cosby settled out of court.
He denied any of this having happened. His attorney stated, "Mr. Cosby does not intend to dignify these allegations with any comment." The claims were called unsubstantiated and media vilification. But that reaction was somewhat expected. What wasn't expected, though, was the mixed reaction from the public.
Be strong! Love you, brother! We've been watching you all our lives, Bill! Yes! That's it! One more of them poses for us, Bill! Thank you!
At no time did you ever see anything inappropriate?
What I saw was fun. Never anything inappropriate. What I saw was work and play at work and fun. Mrs. Cosby was a frequent visitor to the studio. She was there a lot. That's what I saw. What I said is, this is not about the women. This is about something else. This is about the obliteration of legacy.
Here's the purported quote. "Forget these women. What you're seeing is the destruction of a legacy, and I think it's orchestrated. I don't know why or who's doing it, but it's the legacy."
Even as more and more accusations surfaced, there appeared to be a strange divide among those who didn't want to believe the accusations could be true, or perhaps legitimately didn't believe all of the claims, and those who felt Cosby was a monster who had escaped justice for too long. Some also didn't want to confront the fact that such a cultural icon, someone who many in America related to and looked up to for so long, could be capable of such terrible actions.
The trial of comedian and actor Bill Cosby got underway in Pennsylvania today. Cosby, who is now 79, has been accused by more than 40 women of sexual assault over the course of decades. His legacy has been under heavy attack in recent years.
In 2005, Andrea Constant filed a civil suit against Bill Cosby at the advice of her lawyers and the Attorney General, who believed she was telling the truth but also thought her credibility in the eyes of a jury would be questionable. Therefore, no criminal charges were filed at the time, and the case concluded with a $3.38 million cash settlement being paid to Andrea from the sexual assault allegations. Soon, however, the big guns would come out. In December of 2015, Bill Cosby was charged with 3 second-degree felony counts of aggravated indecent assault sprouting from Constant's accusations, as well as information that came out when his 2005 deposition was released.
Huge legal blow for Bill Cosby. A judge has ruled that damaging testimony the comedian gave for an accuser's lawsuit can be used in his criminal sex assault trial. It includes Cosby's admissions. He gave young women drugs and alcohol before sex. Cosby said in a deposition that he had a string of extramarital and consensual relationships with young women. But many of the women say they were drugged and molested.
The arrest warrant for Cosby has also since been released to the public and is quite detailed regarding the extent of the crimes he was being charged with, including the allegations made by Andrea Constant. The affidavit of probable cause reads, Andrea Constant, hereinafter the victim, was employed as the director of operations for Temple University's women's basketball team between December 2001 and March 31, 2004, and in that capacity was introduced to Bill Cosby. In the months following their introduction, Cosby contacted the victim's Temple University office to discuss business-related matters. Eventually, the victim and Cosby exchanged personal phone numbers and developed what the victim believed to be a sincere friendship. Further, she considered Cosby, 37 years her senior, to be a mentor, and described instances in which he invited her to his home for dinner, invited her to restaurants, invited her to events, introduced her to various people, and provided her with guidance and career advice. The victim told investigators she had no intent whatsoever in a romantic relationship with Cosby, but described 2 separate incidents in which Cosby made sexual advances towards her. The first incident occurred several months after their initial meeting, when Cosby invited the victim to his home for dinner prepared by his private chef. When she arrived, she sat and spoke with Cosby near a fire. After about 20 minutes, the chef served her dinner, which she ate by herself, and she drank some red wine. After dinner, she and Cosby were sitting on the sofa when, without warning, Cosby reached over and touched her pants, her waist, and her inner thigh. With that, she dismissed herself to go to the bathroom and gathered her things to leave. Before her departure, Cosby gave her a bottle of perfume and thanked her for little gifts she had brought him. The victim was embarrassed by this encounter. She never thought he would hit on her, especially since Cosby is much older than her father. In the other incident, the victim went for a social visit to Cosby's Cheltenham home. She had consumed a couple of glasses of wine and was talking to him when, out of the blue, Cosby unbuttoned her pants and began touching her. The victim leaned forward to stop him, at which point Cosby got up and went into his kitchen. The victim left 10 minutes later with neither of them saying a word about what just happened. Despite these advances by Cosby, the victim trusted him and continued to accept his invitations to social and professional functions. For example, the victim attended a dinner at his home with a group of his friends and persons working in the Philadelphia restaurant community. She also attended a dinner at his Cheltenham home for a meeting with academic people, including the president of Swarthmore College and professors from the University of Pennsylvania. She went to Cosby's New York City home to meet with one of Cosby's influential entertainment industry contacts. The victim also told police that she met Cosby 2 other times, albeit briefly, at his home, and once at a casino in Connecticut. She reported that nothing inappropriate occurred during these events, all of which occurred before mid-February 2004. On January 22, 2005, in a written statement, the victim told police that sometime between mid-January and mid-February of 2004, Cosby called her on her personal cell phone and invited her to his home at... During the call, Cosby told her that they were going to talk about the victim's future career plans, Cosby added that no one else would be present, and she should dress in comfortable clothing. The victim arrived at the residence at about 8:45 p.m. Cosby, dressed in a sweatsuit, greeted her at the front door and let her in. Once inside, the two sat at a table near the front door and spoke about her future career plans. The victim told Cosby she felt drained and emotionally occupied, and that she'd been missing sleep. During the conversation, Cosby told her that he wanted her to relax. Within the next 10 to 15 minutes, Cosby went upstairs and the victim went to the bathroom. The victim told police that when Cosby returned from upstairs, he had 3 blue pills in his hand. Cosby urged her to take the pills, saying to her, "These'll make you feel good. The blue things will take the edge off." The victim asked if the pills were herbal, and Cosby replied, "Yes, down them. Put them down. Put them in your mouth," as he motioned for her to put the 3 blue pills into her mouth. Cosby placed the pills in the victim's hand and directed her to take the water. She told Cosby she trusted him and then used the water to swallow the pills. Cosby then told the victim to taste the wine. When she resisted and told him she had not eaten anything that day, Cosby again directed her to just taste the wine. In response, the victim took a couple sips of wine. The victim told investigators after she ingested the pills, she and Cosby continued to talk at the table. However, within about 20 to 30 minutes of ingesting the pills, water, and wine, she began experiencing blurred vision and difficulty speaking. When she told Cosby how she was feeling, he instructed her to lie down and he assisted her to the couch. Cosby told her he was going to let her relax. The victim described to the police the wide range of physical symptoms she experienced during this time. She said that she lost all strength in her legs, which felt rubbery and like jelly. She could not see clearly because everything had become blurry and dizzy. She felt nauseous. She could not keep her eyes open, was not aware of any sounds, had no sense of time, and was in and out. Cosby did not sit on the sofa with her, but instead positioned himself behind her. Despite her impaired physical and mental condition, the victim was aware that Cosby was fondling her breasts, put his hand into her pants, and penetrated her vagina with his fingers. Cosby also took the victim's right hand and placed it onto his erect penis. The victim told investigators that she did not consent to any of these acts and was unable to move or speak during the assault. She described her condition as frozen and paralyzed. The victim awoke in the Cosby home at about 4 a.m. the next morning. She discovered that her sweater was bunched up and that her bra was undone and had been moved above her breasts. She said that when she got up and walked towards the door, she saw Cosby, dressed in a robe, standing at the bottom of the staircase. Cosby gave her a muffin, walked to the front door, opened it, and said, "All right." The victim told investigators she left the residence without saying anything. The remainder of the 20-page affidavit goes on to describe how what occurred affected Constant, subsequent conversations she had with Cosby regarding what occurred, police investigation into the matter, Cosby's denial, as well as the reopening of the case with criminal charges. And after a very long pretrial process in which Cosby tried countless times to get the case dismissed, the case of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby Jr. began. During this trial, Cosby's defense attacked Andrea Constant's credibility, pointing out small differences in the story she told regarding the night the alleged sexual assault took place in order to create reasonable doubt in the jury. Constant stuck with her story that Cosby gave her pills which made her immobilized and vulnerable to sexual assault. Cosby's lawyers questioned whether or not the sexual contact between Cosby and Constant was consensual, and alleged that the pills Cosby gave her, which he admitted he did give her in the released deposition from 2005, was simply Benadryl. Phone records show that since the incident, Constant called Cosby at least 53 times, and the defense team would point out that Cosby offered to pay for Constant's schooling. This was an attempt to paint the situation as one where both parties wanted something from the other person. Cosby wanted sex, Constant wanted financial and career help. The prosecution then pointed out that during the 2005 deposition, Cosby had admitted to keeping Quaaludes to give women in order to have sex with them. For those of you who don't know what Quaaludes are or have never seen The Wolf of Wall Street, they're a brand of methaqualone, a central nervous system depressant that acts as a sedative and hypnotic. Domestic production and sales of Quaaludes has been banned by Congress since 1984. Even with this pattern of behavior established, though, it was difficult to objectively rely on witness accounts of an incident that happened over a decade ago. In addition, the judge only allowed testimony from a few of the women who had similar experiences with Cosby, even though there were a much larger group of women who would have been willing to testify at the trial. Cosby himself did not take the stand. The stakes at this criminal trial were significantly higher than the civil cases brought up against Cosby. For the criminal trial, it had to go beyond a reasonable doubt as opposed to just a high likelihood. And because of that reasonable doubt, on June 17, 2017, a mistrial was declared when the jury failed to reach a verdict. Cosby was not found guilty, and neither was he acquitted. The DA immediately said they would retry the case, and retry it they did. So a little less than a year later, on April 2nd, 2018, Cosby's second criminal trial began, with a few changes. First of all, they had to find a jury comprised of non-biased individuals who hadn't already made up their mind on the verdict. Not an easy task. In addition, Cosby switched his lawyer to Thomas Mesereau, who was the lead attorney in the 2005 acquittal at Michael Jackson's molestation trial. The prosecution requested that 19 other alleged victims of Cosby be permitted to take the stand. This trial hit many of the same beats as the first one, with one major difference.
Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon, I'm David Muir. We're coming on the air at this hour because there is breaking news in Bill Cosby's sexual assault retrial. There has been a verdict. The comedian, now 80, has been found guilty on all counts. He'd been accused of drugging and assaulting a woman at his Philadelphia home. Again, guilty, all counts. Moments ago, that panel of 7 men and 5 women, after deliberating for 14 hours, came back with the verdict. They'd come back with 3 questions in the last 24 hours, but no questions today. I want to bring in our legal analyst, Sonny Hostin, who's watching this with me. Guilty on all 3 counts. This is a significant development. He faces prison time, significant prison time.
On April 26, 2018, William H. Cosby Jr. is found guilty on all 3 counts of sexually assaulting Constant in 2004. On July 24, 2018, a Pennsylvania board recommends that Cosby be declared a sexually violent predator, which would put him on the sex offenders registry for the rest of his life. And on September 25, 2018, after a 3-year legal battle that had been decades in the making and a trial whose roots wound back to the 1960s, William H. Cosby Jr. was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison.
Truthfully, where they were attacked, where they were smeared, where they were denigrated, where there were attempts to discredit them. And after all is said and done, women were finally believed, and we thank the jury so much for that. And they were believed after the prosecution met their high standard of having to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And the jury in this second criminal trial found that they believed women. And I'm the happiest I have been about any court decision in 42 years. Justice has been done.
Cosby is expected to be in prison until 2028, which gave his victims and accusers a small sense of justice, a quantum of solace, if you will, that the man who used his influence, power, and authority to take advantage of others would finally be brought to justice. And just maybe, because of that, those in positions of power and influence would think twice before using that influence to manipulate others. The Cosby case shows us that no one is above the... Whoa, hey, wait a second. There's more parts? This isn't over? The fuck? On June 30th, 2021, after serving nearly 3 years in prison, William H. Cosby Jr.'s conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and he was released from prison.
Released from prison this afternoon. He's returned to his home near Philadelphia, and that is where, after the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania overturned his sexual assault conviction. Let's listen.
For reviewing Mr. Cosby's appeal, but also seeing the lies, seeing that Mr. Cosby had immunity. This U.S. citizen who served our country in the Navy, not just in the Navy, but he served our country in so many different ways through his celebrity, him and Mrs. Cosby. Mr. Cosby has always used his celebrity, his name, his likeness, to uplift women. This is a man who refused to perform at the White House with Nixon.
Talk about it.
Nixon put him on a communist list in the 60s, along with so many other great names like Dick Gregory, Jane Fonda. How could a man who was being watched by the FBI every day be raping and drugging women?
This was followed by a sharp outcry, shouting injustice, saying that the actions of the courts delegitimized not only Andrea Constant's claims and allegations, but all of the women who came forward to share their experiences with Cosby. But how in the hell did this happen? Many assume that the conviction was overturned due to the fact that no matter how many witness testimonies you have, you can't substantiate claims with little to no evidence, especially when the alleged incident in question occurred over 10 years ago. That is not the case, however. The Cosby conviction was actually overturned because of something that happened back in 2005 during the civil case between Cosby and Constant, something that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said violated Cosby's due process. Remember the deposition that was released after Cosby's civil case in 2005, the one where Cosby admits to meeting with Constant and giving her the pills? The same deposition where he admitted to drugging women with Quaaludes in order to sleep with them? This was the same deposition the entire criminal case in 2015 was based around. But there was a problem. In 2005, the civil case Andrea Constant versus William H. Cosby Jr. was settled out of court, with Constant receiving a $3.38 million cash settlement. Before Cosby went through the deposition in which he had described his encounter with Constant and admitted using Quaaludes on women, he was given assurances by Bruce L. Castor, the Pennsylvania Attorney General, that his deposition would remain confidential and that he would not be prosecuted. He even told the judge at the hearing, Mr. Cosby was not getting prosecuted at all, ever, as far as I was concerned. My belief was that I had the power to make such a statement. The transcripts of this deposition, which Cosby was under the impression he could not be prosecuted for and would remain totally confidential, was quickly released to the public, and subsequently became the building blocks for his 2015 and 2018 criminal cases. As of the making of this video, Cosby is still out of prison, and the likelihood he will return to prison is very small.
And nobody had the sense to say, wait 1 second, this doesn't match up with the truth. This is not what I was taught in college. This is not what I was taught at home, etc., etc.
Mr. Bill Cosby, this great American citizen, this American treasure, this icon, with us today. I'm going to allow Ms. Bungie to say a few words. Ms. Bungie?
Yes, obviously we are thrilled to have Mr. Cosby home. He served 3 years of an unjust sentence.
Too long.
He did it with dignity and principle, and he was a mentor to other inmates. He was really, as I say, doing the time. The time was not doing him. He's a classy man.
Northeastern University professor of law and criminal justice Dan Medwed is quoted as saying, regarding the Cosby case, "The decision to overturn the conviction has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. This isn't a referendum on whether Cosby committed this act. It's really more of a reaction to what I would consider a prosecutorial misstep." The overturning of the Cosby conviction, as we have already stated, resonated with many as a large step in the wrong direction for movements such as Me Too, which in part advocates women and victims of sexual abuse to come forward so their experiences can be heard and those responsible can be held accountable. This is especially true in the cases where someone with a large deal of power or even a measure of power and influence uses that power and influence to put people in a position that would make them easy targets for assault. This was true in the case of Larry Nassar, this was true in the case of Jerry Sandusky, and it's true in the case of Bill Cosby. Those who side with Cosby often make the argument that we can't know for certain if every single account and accusation of the dozens and dozens made against him are accurate and truthful. And it's true. We simply can't know for sure. However, given the sheer amount of women who came forward with similar stories, along with a trail of accusations dating back to the 1960s upward into the early 2000s, combined with Cosby himself admitting to drugging women in order to rape them and being found guilty by a jury of his peers, one can make the educated guess that at the very least, Bill Cosby has a problem. As of the making of this video, Bill Cosby is living in his mansion in Elkins Park as a free man. What's more, he is actively planning a comeback, speaking tours, criminal justice reform advocacy, and even a return to comedy. For Cosby and all of his supporters, the overturning of the guilty verdict came as a relief, a message of justice, and a feeling of vindication. They're sure that the country will welcome Cosby back with open arms, America's dad finally returning home. For his accusers, however, Cosby's release sends a totally different message. A message that if you're just slippery enough, you can stay above the law. A message that those with enough influence will never truly be brought to justice. That ultimately, not even the cries of many can outweigh the power of one. Oh well, at least Harvey Weinstein is still in prison. For now.